Sure.
And I tend to.
Yeah, there you go.
Speak faster. Okay, there we go. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Jill.
How are we doing today?
Good.
So I'm going to give you kind of a brief little history of me coming up and growing up and starting off in this business. And then I'm going to take some questions, if that's cool with you guys. All right. So as a kid, I always kind of had an affinity for food, but never really wanted to, never really thought about being a chef or working in kitchens. But what really caught my interest was art. I loved art. I loved working with my hands. I loved painting and drawing. So much so that I took pretty much every art class in high school 2 times. So that was what I was going to do. I was set on it. I actually got accepted to Cleveland Institute of Art, the other CIA. And I remember going in for a visitation and thinking, this is not my style. This is not what I envisioned for myself. It was a little bougie for me. Nothing against the Institute, but I wanted something a little bit more earnest. So I decided to go to Cleveland State and study fine art there. Into my first year at Cleveland State, I ended up getting a job in the restaurant business. Am I changing? Yeah, here we go. I was a bar back busser, worked 3 days a week, 12 hours a day, and I really got bit by the restaurant bug real hard. Anybody that's in the restaurant business, I think, has to be bitten by that to really love it. And I just really kind of submerged myself into that and fell in love with it. So I learned how to bartend from that job and just kind of continued on my path in the restaurants. One day I went to a restaurant opening. It was a place called Kika, which is where Flying Fig is now currently. And the owner of the restaurant came up to me and was like, I think you should work for me. I'm like, why? I had no idea why she wanted me to work for her in the kitchen. I had no experience. And she's like, come and meet my chef, and you can decide from there. So I went into the kitchen and met a man by the name of Mark Sherry, who was just a lovely human. And he's like, I will teach you everything you need to know. I was like, okay, here I go. So I literally quit 3 jobs. I was bartending, working retail, and working at a coffee shop. And I quit all 3 of those jobs and started working in a kitchen. And sure enough, he taught me everything. It was like my first year of culinary school, working with Mark. He taught me how to, that's me making a shift. He taught me how to cut onions, break down proteins, like whole fish, make sauce. He taught me how to make risotto. And risotto for me was, it was more about the process of it, because you can't rush it. You know, you have to like sit there and stir it and pour the liquid in and stir it. And it's a long process. And it taught me patience, which I think is really important in the restaurant business and in any kind of creative process, to not get like overwhelmed. So I did that for 3 years, and I was really intent on learning as much as I could from him. And I kind of, at that point, decided that I wanted to align myself with people I respected in the community. So I sought out people to work with. People like Michael Simon, Karen Small, Doug Katz, Jeff Unitowski. All these people were like finite in me discovering my palette and what I wanted to do. 2 of those people, especially Karen Small and Jeff Unitowski, they gave me like range. They let me do specials. They let me do menu items, and that kind of gave me the confidence to like move forward and become better at what I wanted to do. I'm missing a slide here. Sorry. So this started my. I'm my coach over here, sorry. This started my, kind of my non-traditional education, learning from these people as opposed to going to culinary school. And while I was learning all these new techniques and honing my craft, I became a lot more confident in moving forward, and eventually got different jobs as like chef, sous chef, and eventually executive chef for restaurants. I can't express to you enough how important inspiration is for me and is for, I think, any craft. I find inspiration in travel. I've had a lot of I've had a lot of travel experiences, going to Spain and other places. But I feel like you need to pull inspiration from everything around you. I don't know if you guys remember what cookbooks used to look like back in the day, which is like words and maybe a sketch of something that was supposed to look like. Cookbooks, for me today, are works of art. I mean, they're just pages and pages of beautiful drawings. It's like going into a gallery or a museum and looking at a piece of art and being inspired by that piece of art. That's what new cookbooks do for me. So I have tons of those. So when I'm lacking inspiration, I just kind of page through one of those. So that kind of started my creative process and how I come up with my dishes. It's kind of backwards. I think about what the plate's going to look like before I think about the ingredients, and then I work back from there. For instance, I have a halibut on my menu right now, and I had this vision of this white fish on a black plate, and then I kind of just work back from there, trying to figure out what would pair well texturally, color-wise, and everything. And you can go get that anytime you want. We're open 6 days a week. But that for me was, it's all about the composition and sticking to that composition. And because of my art background, I think composition is really important: color, texture, flavors. And you have to kind of stick by that and stick with, and have a confidence to stand behind your work. I had this woman that came in a few months ago that was a picky eater. She kind of got into it with one of my servers, so I had to go over to the table and explain to her, why I did the food, and why I composed the food as I did. And she didn't want anything on the menu, nothing. She wanted to change everything. And I kind of put that thing in her head about, this is my gallery and this is my art. I ended up, kind of caving into her demands because I wanted her to have a good experience. And the next day, sure enough, she put a bad review up on Yelp. So this is what I'm saying: you have to be confident in your craft and your art, and don't back down, and believe in what you're doing, and not take critics so seriously, because I really don't. I don't read Yelp reviews. My partner tells me them, and I'm like, please don't tell me. I just want to be happy and move through my life. So just don't sweat the small stuff, and don't mind what critics have to say about you. And I constantly try to better myself, better my food, through experience, seeking out new methods, seeking out different types of mediums. Mediums to me now are different foods, different produce, fish that I haven't used before. Back in the day, it was paints, clays, paint brushes. I mean, all that stuff is considered mediums. So I constantly try to improve on what I'm doing, and making myself better. I think that at this point, people kind of expect you to do more, and I try to outwit that as much as possible. I'm never really satisfied, and I'm constantly curious about what's next. But you also have to work in the confines of what people actually eat. I'm not doing lamb tongue on my menu or anything like that, because it is interesting, but I don't think it will necessarily sell.
I also love the cookbooks.
Yes.
Do you have some favorites that you find yourself going back to over and over again?
Probably the Outler Kren, Dominique Kren's book. I had the opportunity of going there last summer. She's she has to be an idol, right? She's like a badass female chef. So if you don't like her as a female chef, there's something wrong with you. But her book is beautiful. A year before that, we went to a place called State Bird Provision, and they just came out with a cookbook a couple years ago, and it was actually up for the Beard Award. I'm not sure if it won it or not, but another really beautiful, well-shot book. And I think that I think that's why they put them out. They want to show their art, and if you have a good photographer and a great concept, I think that you're going to have a beautiful book. I want to do a book, like just for selfish reasons. I don't care if it sells. I just want to have like all of my favorite plates in a book, and so people care. Yes.
Hi. What was your happiest moment professionally?
Right now. What do you mean? No, this is probably one of my most nervous moments, so if I stumble on my words, that's why. No, I think that's a really, it's a deep question, because I think once I kind of bridged over being a helper, like being a prep cook, and like being a line cook, and like moving up through the reins of a restaurant. I think probably when I got my first executive chef position, which was at a restaurant called Saucy Bistro, which was in Westlake. And it was just kind of, I was in the right place at the right time. And that's when I started getting noticed. That's when I started getting written about. And that was 8, 9 years ago. So that was a prideful moment for me. It was also the only job I ever got fired from, too, so it's kind of bittersweet. Kind of bittersweet. I didn't do anything wrong. They just, they wanted the spotlight back on them, but that's a whole different book. Any more questions? Yes.
Do you still do anything in the visual arts, or is that more creative?
I would love to. I started getting back into it, and then I opened a restaurant. So I haven't really had a lot of like downtime or personal time, but it is definitely something that I want to get back into. I'm so out of practice, and I think that's another thing that kind of stops me from doing it, because I'm like, okay, I'm really good at this, and then I start like drawing again and just fail miserably at it. But it's something that I want to get back into the practice of for sure. Yep. Yes.
It sounds like mentorship was such a pivotal part of
Huge.
your
Yeah.
career. Have you had the chance to serve as a mentor?
Yes. I feel like I have. I feel like I've had a lot of people that have worked under me that I've taught a lot to, and tried to like simplify their technique. I feel that, and I think every chef has their own way of doing things, their own way of cutting onions, their own way of A, B, and C. I don't think that there's just like one right way. I come from a prep background, so I do things as fast as possible without losing things. And like opening Salt, I've actually had a couple of Lakewood High culinary students as employees, which is fun, like shaping these little brains, and like just showing them what a real restaurant and how it's run, and you're not always going to get please and thank yous, and learning how to be fast and efficient and get food out. So yeah, I think I have, but I don't know if I can answer that really great. I'll have to bring some other people. That's
What would be your last meal?
my last meal. It's not morbid. It'd be a couple. Like death row food, right? So, my mom's fried chicken is bomb. I love it. It's one of my favorite things. There probably have to be some foie gras somewhere in there, and a big glass of bourbon. I think they might not all go together, but what the hell, right? Anyone else? Yes.
Do you have one dish you created that you're most proud of, and then one that sticks out as
The worst? Yeah. Just the worst thing ever. I don't know about the worst thing ever. The lights on, I can take it off. I have very sensitive eyes, that's why I had this on. The best thing I ever made? I'm going to speak on what I've just recently done because it's fresh in my brain. So my favorite thing on my menu right now is a lamb ragu with this lemon ricotta gnocchi. That's my favorite thing right now. Like, that's the dish that sticks out for me. And no, I don't have a worst dish. Yes.
How do you want people to feel when they eat your dishes, your art?
Overwhelmed with like everything. No, we open Salt with the idea and intention of creating an experience around food. When I was coming up in this business, when you went out to dinner, there weren't TVs, there weren't cell phones. You had the person in front of you, and that was it. And the food, obviously. But it was about eating. You went out to eat. It wasn't just kind of filling a void. And so I really want people to come in and enjoy